cut a stencil vinyl or another vinyl decal that you can use with your vision board or another item that you're decorating to celebrate your word of the year. This technique can be done at home when you don't have access to a Cricut or a Silhouette machine. You can use this with stencil vinyl to paint and decorate cork, which is probably the most common type of vision board. But you can also use this technique with adhesive vinyl if you want to decorate like a dry erase board or a shadow box, or you can use this technique with heat transfer vinyl if you want to iron it on to a tote bag or another fabric item. For all three of these types of vinyls, you're going to need an X-acto knife, either a regular pencil or a white color pencil depending on the color of your vinyl, a pen, some scissors and tape, and I recommend having a ruler available. And if you're using stencil vinyl or adhesive vinyl, you're going to also need transfer tape. And of course, if you're painting your design onto a material, you're also going to need paint and a paintbrush. And lastly, you're going to need your design. For this, if you're new to this technique, I recommend using a sans or a serif font and avoiding script fonts because they'll be harder to cut. You're also going to have to print it on regular copy paper, the same size you want your decal to be. So let's get started. So to start, I'm going to set aside my cork and paint and other supplies. Right now I just need my printout and my stencil vinyl. And what I'm going to do is take my printout and I'm going to turn it over. And I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to shade where the word is. So I'm going to make sure that my pencil shading covers the entire word, and the more you shade, the better. So the next thing we're going to do is tape down our stencil vinyl so it doesn't move. We're going to position the word over top our stencil, and we're going to tape that in place so it doesn't move either. Now that we have everything taped in place, we can go ahead and trace. So we're going to take our pen and we are going to follow the lines of our word. So after you're done tracing, we're going to remove the printout. So it's kind of hard to see on the camera, but you should see, when you're done tracing, you should have grooves and light pencil marks to show where you should be cutting. Now that my design was traced into my stencil vinyl, I can go ahead and cut it. So I'm going to grab my X-acto knife and a metal ruler to help me make straight cut lines, and I'm going to start cutting my vinyl. The trick with vinyl is that there's two layers to it, the blue layer we see on top, and then a white backing underneath. When we cut the vinyl, we want to make sure we're only cutting through the blue layer and not the white. Now that all my lines have been cut, I'm going to do a process called weeding. Now just a reminder that I'm using this vinyl as a stencil, so I'm going to remove the letters so I can paint them in onto my cork. As I remove the letters, I'm also going to fix up some of the cut lines where I made mistakes. So now that I've cut and weeded my stencil vinyl, the last thing I need to do is transfer it onto my cork to paint. In order to do that, I'm going to take my transfer tape, which is basically just large sheets of tape. I'm going to peel it and stick it onto my stencil vinyl. after trimming it down, I'm gonna peel away my stencil and my transfer tape. And I am going to line up my stencil as best I can so it's centered. I'm going to stick it down, and I'm going to peel away the transfer tape. And I want to make sure that the stencil vinyl stays stuck to the cork. I'm gonna apply some pressure just to make sure that the stencil is nicely adhered to my cork. And now I'm ready to paint. After applying the first layer of paint, we're gonna let this dry. I always recommend doing 2 layers of paint because it will help make it bold and thick and noticeable. So after the first layer dries, I'm gonna apply a second layer, let it dry again, and once it's completely dry a second time, I'm going to remove the stencil vinyl. Second layer of paint has dried. I can go ahead and peel my stencil off of my corkboard. And there you have your finished decorated corkboard, which you can frame or mount to the wall and use as your vision board for 2021. Instead of a cork or chalkboard for your vision board, you might decide to use a dry erase board or maybe even like a shadow box to keep momentums depending on what your word of the year is. For these types of items, I recommend using adhesive vinyl to decorate. Adhesive vinyl comes in permanent and repositional types. If you decide to use the repositional, you can decorate your item, and at the end of 2021, you can remove your word of the year and redecorate it with your new word for 2022. In my case, I chose a glossy black vinyl. It comes in different colors. The reason I chose black is because I wanted to show you that this technique for tracing still works with your printout design, but instead of a regular pencil, I shaded the backside with a white colored pencil. You can't see it since the paper is white and the graphite is white. And then I used that to place on top of my black vinyl and trace my design. So if I bring this closer to the camera, you can kind of see it's very hard. You can see the grooves of my lettering in a very light white line. And those are the lines I'm going to follow with my X-acto knife to cut out the letters. So I went ahead and I made my cut lines, and I'm going to do the process called weeding. Now, since I want to move the letters onto the erase board, what I'm actually going to do is remove the extra vinyl. I'm going to start in a corner, and you want to make sure that your letters separate from the larger piece and stick to this white backing. And so after you remove that extra black vinyl and you're left with just the lettering, you can go ahead and use your transfer tape to transfer this onto your dry erase board. The last method I want to show you uses heat transfer vinyl to decorate your item. Heat transfer vinyl, also referred to as iron-on vinyl, is specifically used to decorate fabric. So you might decide that your word of the year is learn or read. So instead of a vision board, you might decide to decorate a tote bag to bring to the library when you check out books to read. With heat transfer vinyl, it comes in what's referred to as a shiny side, which is the right side of the material, and a not shiny side, which is the back side of the material. You're actually going to cut on the back side of the material, which means that the word that you have needs to be mirrored. So when you cut on the back side and flip it over, it should read the right way. I used a regular pencil for this since my back side was white, and I transferred my design just like with the other stencil vinyls, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the piece. Now that I've made all my cuts, I'm gonna do the weeding process. For heat transfer vinyl, what you wanna do is remove all of your extra vinyl and leave just your letters. It sometimes helps having a paper clip to get the corner started, but once you have a corner started, you can go ahead and peel. After removing that extra vinyl, if you mirrored your design properly, you should be able to flip this over and have it read the right way. And now you're ready to iron this onto your fabric. You can do this using your at-home iron. I recommend using the setting that is 1 or 2 settings below cotton for about 10 seconds. It's always better to start with a low heat with a low amount of time instead of starting with something too hot or for too long, because it will melt your design.